Hey, this is Don from Padlock Technologies again with another video. Uh, this time we're going to talk about TrustSec without using Cisco ISE. Now, a lot of you might be saying to yourself, you can't do TrustSec without Cisco ISE. And that is 100% true. TrustSec is a Cisco proprietary technique. There are three stages of it. It's your classification, propagation, and enforcement as the three phases of TrustSec. But there is another contender out there that can do TrustSec. They just don't call it TrustSec without using Cisco ISE. And what is that product? Well, that product is called Elisity. And what Elisity did basically is they took the TrustSec piece of Cisco and basically made it its own platform. So you can basically do everything that TrustSec does without everything else. Now, the caveat of this is since it's not network access control like you would typically think, there is no radius in this. Okay. So it's not going to act as the front door to your network. Basically authenticating and authorizing machines, user devices, and stuff like that onto the network. But what it will do that ICE doesn't do very well is it will actually show you traffic flows. Why? Because NetFlow is a part of this. Now, with that being said, you can send NetFlow to ICE, but it's not recommended. Because if you do it and you send too much traffic to it, you can have deployment instability issues if you send NetFlow to ICE. And I always recommend don't do that, right? And again, this is the weak side of ICE is the lack of traffic analytics, right? You always need something else to tell you how the traffic flows are going in the network or how things communicate so you can create your SGACLs. But with Elicity, since it utilizes NetFlow on top of some other things, you can actually simulate a policy based on traffic that's being seen. So what I'm going to give you here is just a broad overview. I am certified now. I'm a certified policy administrator, certified deployment administrator. So I can talk about it. And that's what I've been. So that's why it took me so long to create a video. But I'm going to give you a brief overview of Elicity, how it works, how it's similar to TrustSec. If you know anything about TrustSec, I'm gonna put a video up here so you can get a broad overview of what TrustSec is. I have some lab videos as well with TrustSec. But if you're coming from a TrustSec background, if you know Cisco TrustSec, you pretty much know Elicity's product. You just have to know how they do it in Elicity. So, and they just don't do Cisco, they do Arista and Juniper, and they also can do APIs in the Juniper Mist if your environment in Juniper is controlled by Juniper Mist. So it can do API calls to that. So we're going to just focus on the Cisco side of it. So let's get to the whiteboard here and let's start knocking this out. So Elicity already started off wrong by going with the S first. So Elicity. So basically, like I said before, it's Cisco TrustSec without ICE. So the components in Elicity is their command or their CCC. So this is in the cloud, okay? Then they have this thing called a virtual edge, which can be, you know, in VMware, it can be in Azure, and something really cool is you can actually host the VE or the virtual edge on Catalyst 9300 switches, right? So you can host it on the switch itself. Now, the VE talks to the cloud platform, does an outbound connection, 443 here, and it talks to your command and control, right? So basically, this is a console in the cloud, talks directly to the VE. Now, the VE, the third component here, called the virtual edge node. Basically, these are the switches. So you can have virtual edge nodes or VINs. That's what they'll call it if you ever talk to a rep or something like that. They'll call it. And what these VINs do is they talk directly to the VE. Okay. And protocols, will be SSH. It will also be XPX. You will also have NetFlow, right? You'll have those three protocols talking. So this NetFlow gives you your traffic analytics, or TA. CH or SSH allows you to make some configuration changes, stuff like that, right? Config change. And then obviously SXP allows you to send the SGT to IP mappings from the VE or from command and control VE down to VEN. Now, broad overview here. So they have these things called policy groups. So policy groups, and I'm going to relate this to Cisco TrustSec. Policy groups are basically SGTs. Okay. Now, oh yeah, I forgot to put device tracking on here too. So it does IP device tracking. This is how it knows what devices are plugged into a switch. Okay. So if something plugs into here, it will utilize the IP tracking database to get a MAC to IP binding. And then behind the scenes, they have this thing called identity graph. Now, identity graph is PX grid in a nutshell, because you have these things called connectors, which could be AD, could be CloudStrike, could be whatever. It connects in the identity graph and it enriches the data, right? It enriches whatever it finds. And basically, when you look in an Elisity dashboard and you look at a device, it looks like context visibility in ICE, right? But you can enrich it with more stuff. Like again, what is the score from CloudStrike? What is You can just hook it into a bunch of connectors. So identity graph, PX grid, PGs, SGTs, right? Virtual edge is what communicates to the cloud console, and then the VENs are basically your switches at this point. Now, they also have a concept called security profiles, and I'll say SP for short. These are SGACLs. That's all it is, right? Now, again, because of this net flow, you kind of get to pre-build your security profiles because you get to see how traffic is actually flowing, which is a weak point of Cisco ISE because it doesn't have the visibility. Like ISE doesn't give you visibility into how things are talking to each other. Elisity does, right? So one of the hard parts about doing TrustSec is the enforcement, right? Well, I would say classification is a little bit hard because it forces you to think of your network differently. Propagation is probably the easiest one because there's only going to be two of them. It's either inline tagging or SXP. And then enforcement is the next hardest one because if you don't have the traffic analytics, you don't know how these devices are talking. And what can end up happening is you just got basic permit or deny SGACLs, which is not as efficient as it could be, right? The other thing that's cool about Elisity is continuous monitoring. So it will always monitor devices on your network to see if something changed. And if something changed, it will switch from one uh, policy group to the next policy group, depending on what it is, right? Policy groups are very important. They have a concept called site labels. Site labels can be, say this is site one and site two, site three, and site four. You can have a site label for each site. Now, obviously, you would have a VE and have a VE tied to that site. So everything that falls into that site, you're good to go, right? You can actually put PGs in a group, and then you can just assign that group to a policy, and then it'll match. You can have like 10 different items. Think of it like logical profiles. You can have your individual profiles, and then you have your logical profile, and then you apply your policy to the logical profile. Same concept, right? You have a group of different policy group in one group, and then you'll put your policy on that group that combines five other policy groups, and then you will create your policy on that. So you could just couple a bunch of different policy groups that have the same sort of, I would say, the same traffic analysis, same traffic flow. And instead of making individual policies for that policy set, you would just say, okay, I'm going to create this group and then apply it to a group of PGs. The other thing that's cool about Elisity is simulation. So policy simulation is very cool in Elisity. Now, if you ever look at the Elisity dashboard or the policy, right, when you go to create policy, if you know what the TrustSec matrix looks like, it's literally the same thing. You have, let's say, your source PGs, and then you got your destination PGs. All right. And then you'll have this table there, and then you have these little blocks, right? Basically, it looks like this. And then where the blocks intersect is where you're going to create your policy. So again, literally TrustSec without Cisco ISE, right? So the cool part though about Elicity is you can simulate the policy before you move to enforcement, and it gives you a better visual, right? So usually you would just put in ICE, you would, if you're going to do TrustSec, you would probably you're going to put it in monitoring mode to make sure the policies are actually being hit that you enforced. You check it on the switch and stuff like that. Well, in Elicity, you can actually put the policy in policy simulation, and then you can see the hit counts that could happen if it's based on your policy. You see all this stuff, and then if everything checks out, you can move it into enforcement, right? So it allows you to simulate TrustSec without actually causing an issue. Again, you could do it in ICE as well, using monitoring instead of going straight to enforcement. This just gives you a little bit visual representation. It's a lot quicker to implement. It's really you can put it inside your network and really be non-disruptive because you can put it in learning mode and it just learns everything. And then you can enrich your data with other things that you put into the identity graph. And then on top of that, you can actually, there's a mode in there called flow mode where it will switch this policy in flow mode. I'll put flow mode. When you go to flow mode, it will show you the same policy, but it would actually show you if there was like traffic, right? So you might end up seeing, hey, why are the scanners, say you had a scanner PG and it was talking to AD for some reason. Like just say you had like a server AD. Well, then when you see traffic, you're like, why are my scanners talking to AD? You only really need to talk to some other server. Or this could be security cameras. Why are my security cameras talking to AD? Right? And then when you see that, you can go, all right, well, if that's the traffic flow, I don't want them talking to AD. So now you can go in there and create a deny policy that says security cameras, because they intersect, right? They intersect. Security cameras can't talk to AD. They have no reason to do that. All right. And again, Elicity is super cool. It's very easy to implement. And again, you could just drop it on top of your network without really doing anything disruptive. In terms of, again, behind the scenes is Cisco TrustSec, right? But it gives you a chance to drop it in, learn a bunch of how your network is actually communicating, which is a blind spot of Cisco ISE. You cannot get that. This, because of NetFlow, will show you, hey, this is what's communicating. Now, if you're using Cisco ISE, you probably use something like Secure Network Analytics to get that information and stuff like that. But this is all done in one platform. Now, the blind spot of Elicity, or what it can't do, is it's not going to act as the front gate. So you're not going to plug in, talk to the Elicity server, and then you're going to authenticate and be authorized for a VLAN or something like that. That's not how Elicity is going to work, right? You're just going to what Elicity did is I'm going to take the classification and profiling mechanism of Cisco ISE, same thing, and then I'm going to allow you to create policy groups, which are just SGGs from in the Cisco sense, and then you're going to create a policy set that you can determine, hey, I want them to talk, I want them to talk, or I don't want them to talk. And if you don't know how they communicate, you go into flow mode and you say, okay, let me see how these devices are actually talking to each other, right? Now, when you go into flow mode again, the key thing in the flow mode is you will see like a little thing up here in the upper left-hand corner or something like that, which indicates there's actually traffic going between your source PG and your destination PG. And now you can deep dive into it and say, okay, what kind of traffic do I see between these PGs? And do I want it or not? So that's Elisity in a nutshell. Again, they have something called, there's a couple things here, distribution, they call them distribution zones. Distribution zones are just SGT domains. And the reason why I'm doing this because I know there's somebody going to come in here from Cisco ISE and they're like, how's this kind of different from TrustSec Cisco ISE? And I'm gonna tell you, it's not different, right? It's decoupling a lot of other things. They just focused on doing this very, very, very well. Not everybody has Cisco ISE, so if you don't have it, but you want to kind of have TrustSec, you could try Elicity, right? You could try Elicity, see how it works in your environment. Again, I'm a Cisco ISE head, so I'm always going to push ISE because I love it. But this is another component that you can put from a security standpoint, micro-segmentation standpoint, and there's no agents here, right? This is all agentless. So that's another thing, right? You don't need an agent like some other solutions that are software-based micro-segmentation. Now, the software-based micro-segmentation actually gives you like nano-segmentation, which is a whole nother, segmentation on the process, right? Compared to this is just micro-segmentation based on criteria similar to Cisco ISE and TrustSec, right? Without having ISE. So again, these DZs are just uh, SGT domains. I'll probably make a video SGT domains so I could show you what that looks like. Now another cool feature that is that I again this is another cool feature. They call it intelligent tag distribution. So IDT, and this will be the last thing I'll talk about with Elicity. So ITD, intelligent tag distribution. So what happens here is from an access layer, I'll have this, and then we'll have a core layer right up here. And we'll just use this as an example. So let's say you have a machine over here, you have a machine over here, but you want to block communication here. Now, let's do some here. Let's cut that out. Now, this switch here doesn't know the PG. Now, this is going to sound similar. PG or SGT to IP mapping. Doesn't know anything about it. What will happen in intelligent tag distribution is this switch knows about all of them, right? So this will be the core DZ. What will happen is this switch or the traffic will be analyzed trying to go here, right? For some reason. And because this switch doesn't have the tag, it might have forced it up here first, right? So I'll block it up here. But this core DZ will actually send this PG or SGT to IP mapping down to this switch. So now when the next communication, if they ever try to communicate again, it'll just stop it locally right there, right? And when I say intelligent tag distribution, because it is looking at the flow, right? Because the core is going to have all the policy sets, going to have the IP mappings and all that good stuff. It's going to utilize the flow communication to say, oh, you're trying to talk to this. You don't know the tag. Well, I'm going to distribute the tag down to you so you can stop it earlier in the process so you don't have to come all the way up to me, right? Sort of like, and this is a routing thing, sort of like DMVPN phase 3, right? When you try to communicate to a peer, instead of going to the hub sends that NHRP redirect, and then you do the redirection and you communicate directly to the peer next time, right? So this is intelligent tag distribution, which is pretty cool, right? Like the fact that it could do that as well. So that is Elicity in a nutshell. I like to call Elisity TrustSec without Cisco ISE. So again, if you do not have Cisco ISE, but you're looking to get some kind of TrustSec capability because you saw that in like a video or something like that, and you said, "Oh, that's cool," Elisity is the product that you probably want to check out. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I come up with this stuff all the time. If you like stuff like this, please don't forget to share, comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. I do have something special coming on the way. I'm just waiting for eBay to actually ship it to me. And then we're going to be doing some different videos on Catalyst Center. So I'm waiting for Catalyst Center to get shipped out to me so I can actually do some intro videos on that. And if you're a CCNA, you definitely want to subscribe because this will force you to move up the rank because everything you could do as a CCNA, other than some routing stuff, Catalyst Center can pretty much do, and you don't want to get yourself automated out of your career. This is Don from Padlock Technologies again. Thank you, and have a nice day.